Ever wondered what it was like to be a true pioneer of rock and roll? Little Richard didn't just make music, he transformed pop culture with his wild energy and bold style. But his journey wasn't just about fame. Behind the flashing lights, he battled addiction, faced a segregated music industry, and confronted personal struggles that shaped his legacy. In this video, we'll take you inside his abandoned Tennessee home, explore the mysteries of his estate, and reveal the truth behind his net worth at the time of his passing in 2020. Stay tuned for the untold story of the one and only Little Richard. What was Little Richard's net worth? When he died, Little Richard once proudly called himself the architect of rock and roll, and many would agree with that claim. Born Richard Wayne Penniman in Macon, Georgia in 1932, he exploded onto the music scene in 1955 with his groundbreaking song, Tutti Frutti. With its iconic line, "A wop bop a loo bop a lop bum boom," Little Richard helped shape the future of popular music forever. However, like so many black artists of his time, he was taken advantage of by the industry that profited from his success. According to Forbes, Art Rupee of Specialty Records heard an early version of Tutti Frutti and struck a deal with Little Richard for a mere $50 up front for the rights to the song, along with a tiny royalty of half a cent for each copy sold. In contrast, white artists were earning between 3 and 5 cents per record sold. To make matters worse, Little Richard didn't receive any royalties when other artists covered his songs. This was a widespread issue in the 1950s and 1960s, as white artists were often favored by the industry, with their recordings considered more commercially viable, even when they were directly influenced by black artists' original work. Little Richard had a tough time getting paid for his groundbreaking music. In a 1984 interview with People, he opened up about the unfair contract he signed as a young artist in 1955. Reflecting on the situation, he said, "I was a dumb black kid, and my mama had 12 kids and my daddy was dead. I wanted to help them, so I took whatever was offered. Rock and roll was an exit for me." The article also sheds light on some of the harsh realities he faced, including being arrested because of his flamboyant appearance and long hair. Club owners would often pay him with guns on the table, likely to discourage him from complaining about being underpaid. Despite these struggles, his impact on the music world was undeniable. His unique style and performance influenced future rock legends like Paul McCartney of the Beatles and Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, both of whom saw him perform when he toured England. People also highlighted the spontaneous integration that occurred at his shows, where black and white audience members would get up to dance together, even though they were supposed to be seated in racially segregated sections. In 1984, Little Richard took legal action and filed a $115 million lawsuit against Specialty Records, ATV Music Corporation, and Venice Music, claiming he hadn't received any royalties since 1955. Court documents revealed that his 1955 contract with Specialty had agreed to pay him 50% of royalties in exchange for owning the songs. He had previously sued the company in 1959, settling for $11,000 after agreeing to waive his right to royalties. At the time of his death, Little Richard's net worth was estimated at $40 million by Celebrity Net Worth. However, attorney Michael B. Cohen explained on his website that Richard had settled for cash every time he sued for his royalty rights, which meant he missed out on millions of dollars. Cohen also suggested that Richard's primary source of income was from his performance fees. Little Richard's attorney, Arthur Pollock, argued that Richard was owed royalties from his music, explaining, "In this case, the money he should have received for writing the songs has been going to the music publishers and stopping there. He's never seen anything from that." A brief mention in Billboard on May 17, 1986, reported that Richard had settled his lawsuit for an undisclosed amount. In a strange twist, as reported by Showbiz Cheat Sheet, Michael Jackson accidentally acquired the rights to Little Richard's songs in 1985. When Jackson bought the Beatles' catalog for $47 million, Richard's songs were included in the deal. In a 2004 interview with Rolling Stone, Little Richard reflected on this, saying, "I've never gotten money from most of those records, and I made those records. Michael Jackson owns the specialty stuff now. He offered me a job with his publishing company once for the rest of my life as a writer. At the time, I didn't take it. I wish I had now." Now, let's delve into the Little Richard's former Tennessee home. Little Richard's former Tennessee home is now on the market for $1.75 million. Located in Lynchburg, this 6,000-square-foot property is actually two homes in one, each with its own entrance but sharing a common foyer. The left side of the house features 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, with a mix of hardwood and carpeted floors in the living and dining areas. Despite Little Richard's larger-than-life personality, the design is surprisingly understated with a more neutral color scheme. On the other side, the home is anything but subtle. The right side boasts 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a bright, colorful palette of blues, pinks, purples, and fuchsia, reflecting the rock legend's vibrant persona. While the house shows signs of age, its unique 2-in-1 layout and nearly 14 acres of secluded hilltop land will surely attract buyers. The property offers plenty of privacy, perfect for those looking to enjoy nature in peace. Lynchburg may be famous for being the home of Jack Daniel's whiskey, but it's located in a dry county, so potential buyers looking for a party pad might need to look elsewhere. This quirky, one-of-a-kind home, built to the rock and roll icon's specifications, was his residence for many years, making him a beloved local figure. Little Richard, who passed away in 2020 at age 87, left behind a home full of memories and personalized touches. The property was listed by real estate agent Lisa Cole, and local investor Joey Quick couldn't resist taking a look. What started as a simple curiosity turned into a passion project for Quick. Despite the property's overgrown land and the work it needed, Quick was hooked from the start. He recalls, "I definitely wanted the project." While many of Little Richard's personal items were taken by the family, the home itself still holds signs of the music legend's influence, including his clothes and awards. Quick soon struck a deal with the estate heirs, buying the home in 2020 for $349,900. From there, he embarked on an extensive renovation. The house, originally designed for Little Richard and his family, featured 2 of everything: 2 kitchens, living rooms, dining rooms, and more. Quick updated the layout but kept the home's distinctive features, including arched doorways, and gave the space a more neutral color palette, swapping out the singer's bold shades of purple and unique tile choices. Spanning 6,200 square feet, the house is accessed via a winding gravel driveway, now paved, and sits on beautifully landscaped land. Little Richard, who moved from California to Tennessee in the early 2000s, made a lasting impression on the town, even after he moved to Nashville. For Quick, the house offers a piece of rock and roll history, a warranty deed with both Little Richard's and his name on it. It's a cool memento from a true music pioneer known for hits like Tutti Frutti and Long Tall Sally, and as a first-class inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986. The house is still not fined the new owner. The Little Richard house is closed indefinitely. Here's why. The Little Richard house, located in Macon's Pleasant Hill neighborhood, has remained closed since Macon-Bibb County stopped funding it last year. This decision comes after the county, along with the Georgia Department of Transportation and the Macon-Bibb County Enhancement Authority, had previously worked to restore the childhood home of the legendary musician. Currently, the Enhancement Authority is responsible for managing the site. Back in 2013, local leaders announced plans to move the house as it stood in the way of the I-16/I-75 improvement project. 3 years later, in 2016, the move was officially approved, and commissioners gave the green light to relocate the home from 5th Avenue to its current spot on Craft Street, In 2017, the house was carefully moved piece by piece across from the Pleasant Hill Community Garden. However, budgetary issues in 2018 threatened the project's completion. Macon-Bibb County had to cut funding drastically. What had been a request for $96,000 was reduced to just $10,000, but the county eventually provided an additional $90,000 to the project a month later. In March 2019, the Little Richard House officially opened to the public after renovations were completed. The house, now a symbol of the Pleasant Hill community and its famous resident, was intended to be a place for locals to gather, while also offering an opportunity for visitors to learn more about Little Richard and his music. Fast forward to 2024, and the house has again faced setbacks. Macon-Bibb County stopped funding the house last month due to the authorities' failure to provide an audit detailing how the county's money was spent. Furthermore, the authority had not returned excess funds as required. The authority, led by Interim Executive Director Letitia Woods, stated that the closure was necessary because they lacked clarity regarding the future of the site and could not afford the audit. Mayor Lester Miller expressed hopes that the audits would be completed soon, allowing the house to reopen. He also assured the public that the county would work to ensure the house remains an option for the Pleasant Hill neighborhood moving forward. Little Richard changed music forever, but the singer struggled with addiction, a segregated music industry, and his own sexuality. Let's go back and see what he has suffered through his life. Richard Wayne Penniman, known to the world as Little Richard, was born in Macon, Georgia, on December 5, 1932. He was the third of 12 children born to Leva May and Charles Bud Penniman. His father, a brick mason and a church deacon, also ran a nightclub called the Tippin' Inn and sold bootlegged moonshine on the side. His mother was a devout member of Macon's New Hope Baptist Church. Although he was supposed to be named Ricardo, a mix-up led to him being called Richard instead. Raised in the Pleasant Hill neighborhood of Macon, Richard grew up in a religious household. His family moved between various AME Baptist and Pentecostal churches, with some relatives even becoming ministers. Richard was drawn to the Pentecostal churches, particularly because of their lively music and passionate worship. He often recalled how people in his community would sing gospel songs throughout the day during the challenging times of segregation to lift their spirits. There was so much poverty, so much prejudice in those days, he once said, and people sang to feel their connection with God and to wash their burdens away. From an early age, Richard was known for his powerful voice and mischievous personality. His family gave him the nickname Lil Richard due to his small, thin frame. He was a prankster, often causing trouble with his neighbors. Richard began singing in church and taking piano lessons while still young, and he developed a strong, booming voice that sometimes earned him trouble. He recalled once being told to stop singing in church because his voice was so loud and forceful, earning him the nickname Warhawk. As a child, Richard enjoyed making music from anything he could find. He would often bang on steps, tin cans, pots, and pans while singing, much to the annoyance of his neighbors. His musical influences came from gospel legends like Brother Joe May, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Mahalia Jackson, and Marion Williams. Inspired by Brother Joe May's incredible vocal power, Richard even considered becoming a preacher at one point. He also credited the Clara Ward Singers for inspiring one of his signature hollers. Richard attended Macon's Hudson High School, where he was not an outstanding student, but he did manage to pick up the alto saxophone and joined the school's marching band in 5th grade. During high school, he worked part-time at Macon City Auditorium, selling Coca-Cola to concert-goers. He had the chance to see famous performers like Cab Calloway, Lucky Millinder, and, most notably, his idol, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. These experiences played a significant role in shaping his love for music and performance. In October 1947, a 14-year-old Richard was singing Sister Rosetta Tharpe's songs before one of her performances at the Macon City Auditorium when she overheard him. Impressed, she invited him to open her show that night. After the performance, Tharpe paid him, a gesture that inspired Richard to pursue a career as a professional performer. By 1949, Richard joined Dr. Nubilio's traveling show, where he was influenced by Nubilio's eccentric style, which included wearing turbans and capes. Nubilio also carried a black stick and showcased what he called the Devil's Child, a dried-up baby with clawed feet and horns. He told Richard he was gonna be famous, a prophecy that stuck with him. Before entering the 10th grade, Richard left home and joined Hudson's medicine show, where he began performing Louis Jordan's Caledonia, the first secular R&B song he ever learned. His family, strict in their religious beliefs, considered R&B devil music, so this was a significant step for him. Influences from Jordan were evident in Richard's vocal style, and his whoop sound on songs mirrored Jordan's, along with adopting Jordan's signature pencil-thin mustache. During this period, Richard also performed in drag under the name Princess Lavone. In 1950, he joined Buster Brown's orchestra, where Brown gave him the name Little Richard. Richard continued to perform in the minstrel show circuit, appearing in vaudeville acts like Sugarfoot Sam from Alabama, the Tidy Jolly Steppers, the King Brothers Circus, and the Broadway Follies. Settling in Atlanta, he frequented clubs like the Harlem Theater and Royal Peacock, where he watched R&B performers such as Roy Brown and Billy Wright. Brown and Wright's flashy stage presence, particularly Wright's flamboyant persona, left a lasting impression on him. After befriending Wright, Richard learned the art of showmanship from him, adopting a pompadour hairstyle, flashy clothing, and the pancake makeup Wright favored. Wright, impressed by Richard's singing voice, introduced him to Zena Sears, a local DJ, who recorded Richard at his station with Wright's band. These recordings led to a contract with RCA Victor, and in 1951, Richard released his first single, Every Hour, a blues ballad that became a hit in Georgia. The success of the song helped mend his relationship with his father, who began playing it on the jukebox at his nightclub. Despite the early success, Richard's time with RCA Victor was short-lived. He recorded a total of 8 songs with the label, but his records failed to chart. The lack of promotion behind his releases, though they were advertised in Billboard, led to his departure from RCA Victor in February 1952. After his father's death in 1952, Richard found a new wave of success when RCA Victor reissued some of his old recordings on their budget RCA Camden label. During this time, he kept performing, and Clint Brantley, who had been a part of his early career, agreed to manage him. Richard moved to Houston and formed a new band, the Tempo Toppers. They performed on blues package tours across southern clubs like Club Tijuana in New Orleans and Club Matinee in Houston. In February 1953, Richard signed with Don Robey's Peacock Records and recorded 8 tracks, including 4 with Johnny Otis and his band, though these tracks were never released at the time. Unfortunately, like his experience with RCA Victor, none of Richard's singles with Peacock made it onto the charts, even though he was quickly gaining a reputation for his high-energy stage performances. As tensions over money with Robey grew, the two got into a physical altercation, with Robey knocking Richard out during a scuffle. Frustrated with the record business, Richard returned to Macon in 1954, where he struggled with poverty and took a job as a dishwasher for Greyhound Lines. During this time, he met Esquerita, a flamboyant performer whose wild onstage persona and dynamic piano playing had a huge influence on Richard's own style. That same year, Richard disbanded the Tempo Toppers and formed a new, harder-edged rhythm and blues band called the Upsetters, which included drummer Charles Connor and saxophonist Wilbert Lee Diamond Smith. They toured under Brantley's management and supported R&B singer Christine Kittrell on some recordings. Despite having no bassist, the band played on, with Connor hitting the bass drum so hard it mimicked the sound of a bass fiddle. In 1954, Richard joined a southern tour with Little Johnny Taylor. Later, with advice from Lloyd Price, he sent a demo to Price's label, Sexuality Records, in February 1955. After several months of waiting, Richard finally received a call from the label. In September of that year, Sexuality owner Art Rupi lent Richard the money to buy out his Peacock contract, and he began working with producer Robert "Bumps" Blackwell. Blackwell immediately saw potential in Richard, likening him to Ray Charles, though Richard told him he preferred the style of Fats Domino. Blackwell sent Richard to New Orleans to record at Cosimo Matassa's legendary J&M Studios with some of Domino's session musicians, including drummer Earl Palmer and saxophonist Lee Allen. However, the sessions didn't yield much inspiration or excitement, though Blackwell still believed in Richard's talent. One night, frustrated by the lack of progress, Blackwell and Richard decided to unwind at the Dewdrop Inn nightclub. It was there that Richard burst into a rowdy, risque blues song he had written called Tutti Frutti. Blackwell instantly recognized the hit potential and had songwriter Dorothy Labostri rewrite the more explicit lyrics to make it radio-friendly. Tutti Frutti was recorded in just 3 takes in September 1955 and released as a single in November. It became an immediate hit, reaching number L2 on Billboard's Rhythm and Blues bestsellers chart and crossing over to the pop charts in both the US and the UK. The song peaked at number 21 on the Billboard Top 100 and number 729 on the British singles chart, eventually selling 1 million copies. After the success of Tutti Frutti, Little Richard went on to release a string of hits, including Miss Anne, Slippin' and Slidin', Long Tall Sally, Lucille, and Rip It Up. But it wasn't just his music that got attention. Little Richard's personal life made him stand out even more: relationships and family. Around 1956, Little Richard became involved with Audrey Robinson, a 16-year-old college student from Savannah, Georgia. Despite not being a fan of rock and roll, Robinson and Richard hit it off quickly. In his 1984 autobiography, Richard claimed that he invited other men, including Buddy Holly, to have sexual encounters with Robinson. However, Robinson denied these claims. She also turned down his marriage proposal. Later, she became known as Lee Angel, a stripper and socialite. The two reconnected in the 1960s, but their relationship ended once again due to Richard's struggles with drug abuse. Robinson later appeared in a 1985 interview for the South Bank Show, where she denied Richard's version of events. She also shared that Richard would have her buy food for him at white-only fast food restaurants, as he couldn't enter because of his race. Richard's only marriage was to Ernestine Harvin, whom he met at an evangelical rally in October 1957. They started dating that year and married on July 12, 1959 in Santa Barbara, California. Harvin later recalled that their marriage started off well, with normal sexual relations. However, by the time they divorced in April 1964, Harvin attributed the breakup to the challenges of living with Richard's fame. Richard, on the other hand, claimed the marriage ended because of his neglect and his sexuality. Both Robinson and Harvin denied Richard's statements about his sexuality, and Richard believed they didn't know because he was such a pumper in those days. During their marriage, Richard and Harvin adopted a 1-year-old boy named Danny Jones, whom they had known through a late church associate. Richard remained close to Danny, who later worked as one of his bodyguards. Harvin eventually remarried McDonald Campbell. Sexuality. In 1984, Little Richard reflected on his childhood, explaining that he was often mocked for his mannerisms, including the way he walked and talked. He said that he was subjected to cruel jokes about his sexuality and was punished severely by his father whenever he wore his mother's makeup or clothing. Richard admitted that as a teenager, he had sexual relationships with both men and women. Due to his effeminate behavior, his father kicked him out of their home when he was just 15. In a 1985 interview on the South Bank Show, Richard recalled, "My daddy put me out of the house. He said he wanted 7 boys, and I had spoiled it because I was gay." In his early 20s, Richard became involved in voyeurism. A female friend would drive him around to pick up men who allowed him to watch them have sex in the backseat of cars. His behavior caught the attention of Macon police, and in 1955, Richard was arrested for sexual misconduct. He spent 3 days in jail and was temporarily banned from performing in the city. During the early 1950s, Richard met openly gay musician Billy Wright, who helped shape his iconic look. Wright encouraged Richard to use pancake makeup and wear his hair in a long pompadour, which became part of Richard's signature style. Richard also had his band, the Upsetters, wear makeup to help them gain entry into predominantly white venues. He later explained that the makeup made it less likely for white men to assume he was after white women, and he enjoyed the added flamboyance it gave him. Richard's distinctive appearance still attracted female fans, some of whom sent him nude photos and contact information. Throughout his career, Richard's personal life was marked by a continued interest in voyeurism and group sex. He wrote that Audrey Robinson, his former partner, would participate in these activities with him. Despite his public claim of being born again after his religious conversion in 1957, Richard's behavior continued to involve sexual scandals. He was expelled from Oakwood College after exposing himself to a male student, an incident that was reported to the student's father. In 1962, he was arrested for spying on men in public restrooms at a Trailways bus station in Long Beach, California. In a 1982 appearance on Late Night with David Letterman, Richard discussed his sexuality, saying, "God gave me the victory. I'm not gay now, but I was gay all my life. I believe I was one of the first gay people to come out. But God let me know that He made Adam be with Eve, not Steve. So, I gave my heart to Christ." In his 1984 autobiography, he described homosexuality as unnatural and contagious, but also stated he was omnisexual. In a 1995 interview with Penthouse, Richard reaffirmed that he had always known he was gay, saying, "I've been gay all my life." However, by 2007, Mojo magazine referred to him as bisexual. In October 2017, Richard once again denounced homosexuality in an interview with the Christian Three Angels Broadcasting Network, calling both homosexuality and transgender identities unnatural affection and stating they went against the way God wants you to live. Drug use. During his early years in the 1950s rock and roll scene, Richard was known for his commitment to a clean lifestyle, avoiding alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs. He even took a firm stance against his bandmates' substance use, often fining them for indulging in these habits. However, by the mid-1960s, Richard's personal choices began to change. He started drinking heavily and experimenting with cigarettes and marijuana. By 1972, Richard had developed a dependency on cocaine, something he later humorously reflected on, saying, "They should have called me Lil Cocaine. I was sniffing so much of that stuff." As the years passed, his struggles with substances deepened, and by 1975 he was also using heroin and PCP, commonly known as angel dust. These habits began to take a toll on both his career and personal life. Looking back, he said, "I lost my reasoning." Richard acknowledged that his addiction to cocaine, PCP, and heroin was costing him up to $1,000 a day. He also recalled a particularly frightening moment in 1977 when his longtime friend Larry Williams, overwhelmed by his own drug issues, showed up with a gun and threatened him over a drug debt. Richard described that as the most terrifying moment of his life, reflecting on their deep friendship despite the danger of the situation. That same year, Richard faced devastating personal losses, including the death of his brother Tony from a heart attack, the accidental shooting of his nephew, whom he considered like a son, and the tragic murders of two close friends. These traumatic events led Richard to make a life-changing decision. He gave up drugs, alcohol, and rock and roll, turning back to his faith and returning to the ministry. Religion. Richard's family had strong roots in evangelical Christianity, with several relatives, including two uncles and a grandfather, serving as preachers in the Baptist and African Methodist Episcopal traditions. He was also deeply involved in the Pentecostal churches in Macon, which he loved for their lively music, dynamic praise, dancing in the Holy Spirit, and speaking in tongues. Influenced by these experiences, Richard, at just 10 years old, began going around proclaiming himself a faith healer, singing gospel music to people who were ill and offering prayers. Many would express feeling better afterward, sometimes even giving him money in appreciation. He was inspired by the work of singing evangelist Brother Joe May, and for a time aspired to follow in his footsteps as a preacher. In 1957, after a spiritual transformation, Richard enrolled at Oakwood College, a predominantly black Seventh-day Adventist school in Huntsville, Alabama, to study theology. During this time, he adopted a vegetarian lifestyle, in keeping with his newfound religious commitment. In 1970, he was ordained as a minister, and by 1977, he had resumed his evangelical activities. Richard represented Memorial Bibles International and promoted their Black Heritage Bible, which emphasized the many black figures in the Bible. His preaching focused on unity and spreading God's love to people of all races, encouraging repentance and spiritual renewal. Richard's faith remained a central part of his life, especially after the death of his mother, Leva May, in 1984. Before her passing, he promised her that he would stay committed to his Christian beliefs. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Richard officiated at numerous celebrity weddings, including a 2006 ceremony where he married 20 couples who had won a contest. His deep spiritual knowledge also led him to speak at the funerals of musical legends like Wilson Pickett and Ike Turner. In 2009, at a benefit concert to help rebuild playgrounds destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, Richard invited guest of honor Fats Domino to pray with him. He and his team distributed inspirational booklets to concert-goers, a tradition at Richard's shows. In 2012, Richard shared his thoughts on spirituality with a crowd at the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C., urging them to get close to the Lord as the world seemed to be approaching its end. The following year, he elaborated on his spiritual beliefs, stating that God had spoken to him and told him that the world was nearing its end. While some audience members laughed at his apocalyptic message, others cheered in support. Richard responded to the laughter, emphasizing that his faith was no joke. "Without God, I wouldn't be here." That Judaism didn't conflict with his other religious beliefs. In 2017, Richard returned to his SDA roots, appearing on a televised interview on 3ABN and sharing his personal testimony at the 3ABN Fall Camp meeting later that year, Health Problems and Death. In October 1985, after completing Lifetime Friend, Richard returned from England to film a guest appearance on Miami Vice. Shortly after the taping, he was involved in a car accident in West Hollywood, crashing his sports car into a telephone pole. The accident left him with a broken right leg, broken ribs, and injuries to his head and face. His recovery took several months, preventing him from attending the inaugural Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony in January 1986, where he was one of the inductees. He sent a recorded message in his place. In 2007, Richard began to experience difficulty walking due to sciatica in his left leg, which required him to use crutches. In November 2009, he underwent surgery to replace his left hip. Although he was able to return to performing the following year, he continued to face challenges with his hip, and during performances, he was often brought on stage in a wheelchair, singing while seated. On September 30th, 2013, Richard shared with CeeLo Green at a Recording Academy fundraiser that he had suffered a heart attack the previous week. Thanks to quick thinking, taking aspirin, and having his son turn on the air conditioner, he was able to survive the ordeal. Richard remarked, "Jesus had something for me. He brought me through." In April 2016, Richard's health was a concern, as his friend Bootsy Collins posted on Facebook asking fans to lift him up in their thoughts. Reports suggested that Richard's condition was serious, and his family had gathered at his bedside. However, on May 3, 2016, Rolling Stone reported that Richard had reassured his fans, saying, "Not only is my family not gathering around me because I'm ill, but I'm still singing. I don't perform like I used to, but I have my singing voice, I walk around, I had hip surgery a while ago, but I'm healthy." His lawyer also added, "He's 83. I don't know how many 83-year-olds still get up and rock it out every week, but in light of the rumors, I wanted to tell you that he's vivacious and conversant about a ton of different things, and he's still very active in a daily routine." Although Richard continued to sing in his 80s, he stayed away from the stage. Richard passed away on May 9, 2020, after a 2-month illness at the age of 87 at his home in Tullahoma, Tennessee, following complications related to bone cancer. He was surrounded by his brother, sister, and son in his final moments. Following his passing, tributes poured in from musicians like Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, John Fogerty, Elton John, and Lenny Kravitz. Richard was laid to rest at Oakwood University Memorial Gardens Cemetery in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay updated on future content. We hope you found this story insightful. See you in the next video. Goodbye.